say. Remember, at the end, you have a feedback form and your PDU is attached to that. And then just a couple of updates. Hopefully you can see my colorful screen. For the series after the new year, you will receive a new Zoom link and calendar invite for all of those dates. We were on a cadence of every other week, and then with the break at the holiday, it got off from what our actual schedule is. So you may see some cancellation emails, but you will receive a new link that is the same link each time for the real dates that we have advertised and shared with you. Let's see. And then I have gotten some emails about missing PDUs, and I've worked through some of those today. I still have a list, so hopefully you'll get those by the end of the week. So you can spend your holiday break putting in your professional learning renewal units. And with that, I will stop sharing and give the microphone to Nell.
Hey, everybody. I am gonna make sure I'm on. Yes, I am. I am so excited to be here. I'm Nell, and I am in Bozeman, Montana. I am the creator of the Transformative Reading Teacher Group and the Big Sky Literacy Summit. And when I was asked to do this session, this is months ago, Jackie asked me. Jackie and I have a longstanding relationship of coaching and growing together. And it came to Sunday, and I was thinking about this session, and I thought, I happen to know two of the greatest people on the planet who happen to know a lot. They knew it before I knew it. When you have the mentors that, they knew it before you knew it. So whenever I had questions, I contacted Michael and Linda, like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. So it's okay if you don't know what you're doing all the time, just know who to ask. Sometimes you just have to know who, not how. And so Michael and Linda were my who's when I didn't know how. And so it's very important to really, just take the moment to celebrate those people in our lives, but also let them be the ones that are the voices of wisdom. So from the East and from the South, they're coming in from Mississippi and Alexandria. They are coming from far away, not Montana, to join us today. My colleagues, my dear friends, Michael Hunter and Linda Farrell, and I'll let them take it away.
Hello. So Linda, are you going to share or should I?
I think you should.
Okay. Let me see if I can do that. It should work. Can you guys see the PowerPoint? Okay, because they've changed it so it looks different on our end. Okay. So welcome. I'm going to just dive us right in and get us started. So Jackie, were you able to send out the handouts? Did I get them to you in time? Well, you're muted.
Yeah, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I just linked them in the chat.
Okay, great.
So you're able to open them.
So you guys can have the handouts, but we're going to go ahead. So we've got a couple objectives here today. Primarily, we want to talk to you about, one, the purpose of decodable texts. We're going to talk briefly about recognizing that not all decodable texts are created equally. Then the big focus I think we're going to spend our time on, I hope, is to show you how to use decodable text effectively in intervention instruction. And we're going to share a tracking chart in the handouts that we use when we do it. So, stuff all over my screen, sorry. Hang on one second, guys. Something's happening. Okay, so the basic idea behind this workshop fundamentally is decodable readers they're a tool, they're designed for instruction, they have a specific purpose in instruction, and that is for practicing accurate reading with words that the students have been taught the patterns for, have practiced the patterns in instruction, and are now really getting that final practice to develop their accuracy and start developing some automaticity with reading the types of phonics patterns they've been introduced to and taught. And then, of course, high frequency words that go along with that. What we're going to talk about today, warning, we are talking about early reading intervention instruction. We're talking about instruction. What the kids do with books outside of that intervention instruction, they can pick up any book they want, as far as we're concerned. What we're talking about is using decodables for instruction, not for whole class instruction or independent reading. So Linda, you want to talk about
Sure.
briefly about the differences?
We debated whether to include this, and just in case there's anyone who isn't clear about the difference between leveled and decodable readers, we're going to just throw this in. Ask us questions because I'm going to go really quickly. Quick, go, Michael.
Oh, sorry, that's right. I forgot. You don't have control.
Oh, go back to
I don't have control. There we go.
This is a chart that you can use that shows you the essence of the difference between the two kinds of readers, decodable readers and early leveled readers. Decodable readers include only words with phonics patterns that the children have been taught and high frequency words. And for intervention instruction, we try to stick as close to this as we can. We're not talking about whole class instruction because that will be whatever your curriculum tells you to do. If you have leveled readers, and unfortunately a number of curricula do use decodable readers and leveled readers, what you'll find is that their decodable readers are characterized by words with patterns that they've been taught. That children have been taught. They're usually not very deep, especially just when you have CBC and VC words. Early leveled readers, however, are characterized by predictable text, many high frequency words, pictures that support the text. I think the thing to remember when you're using decodable readers is that the primary focus is to teach the children to read accurately. When you're using leveled readers, which we hope you're not for early reading, the children are encouraged to use pictures and context clues to identify words. We're going to talk more about that later. So decodable words, sounding out the words, is the only strategy that they can use. And high frequency words, you may have to help them with those. Where in early leveled readers, they use lots of strategies, which is not good. And we'll get to that later. Keep
Hey,
going, Mike.
Linda.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that we see in our curriculum out there is that they might say that they have 100% decodable text in that kindergarten first, the first few units of kindergarten, but then all of a sudden it drops to 70% decodable and
Yeah.
children start to really struggle. Can you talk a little bit about how that, while it might be called the decodable, it's more like a leveled text for a child, and it's what that they're being asked to teach. So then we as teachers have to be really discerning and thinking, wow, there might be a discrepancy between what this child has been taught and what this text has in it.
You know, that's one of the things that why we make a clear distinction between classroom instruction and intervention instruction. The one I can think of is geodes, and it goes with Wilson. And geodes is about 70% decodable. And if you're using that in the classroom, I can't opine because I don't want to say anything about classroom instruction. I can say I would try to find different decodables to use when I'm doing intervention so that the children do not have to memorize any of the words or guess any of the words. So that's my advice.
So what I think you're saying, Linda, is that for intervention, you want the decodables to be as decodable as possible,
Yes.
according to the scope and sequence that you're
Yes.
doing your intervention with.
Yes.
And that might mean for those of you out there that are working with limited resources, you can't always pull the text from your core curriculum into your intervention, is the big point I wanted to bring out. Because Michael and Linda have done this so long that they've very clearly realized this text better be very decodable.
Yes.
So, and it better align with what that student can do that's why they're intervention. And that's why we can't keep giving them a text that may be over their head.
Any questions? No. Okay. Well, I just want to show you an example of a decodable book. This is from Power Readers. Susan Evers is a friend of Danielle's and Michael's and mine. She wrote the book, but the kids love these books. And you can see that this is a decodable reader. And hey, Danielle, take a guess what the focus is. Just take a guess.
You,
Pig in mud,
Pig and mud. And what do you think the vowel is we're working on?
the U,
The long U?
short U.
Short U. This they have had short A, short E, short I, and well, they've had. I think they've had short. I can't remember the scope and sequence, but they've had several vowels. You can see that they've had O because they've had. You've got not here, and this
Not,
is
not.
not hot, not hot, not. All right, so that's a decodable reader. Michael, next one. This is another decodable reader. One of the things about decodable readers is that the pictures should not give you hints for the words. And if you look at this, you'll see Vet Dan got Big Ben for me. Well, if the child looked up to try to figure out what the word vet is, he would answer doc. I mean, most kids would not answer. He would say doctor. They don't know what a vet is. And then the next one, Big Ben can sit. It does give a little bit of a clue, but not like leveled readers, which we're going to go to next. Here is an early emergent leveled reader, and you can see that it says this is an orange. This is a banana. If the picture has apples on the next, it would say this is, guess, this is an, Danielle?
She's muted, Linda.
Apple. And so you can see that the children, once they hear this is an or this is a, then they just have to look at the picture. And we indeed have children say to us, to look at the words to read this book. And we're giving them whole wrong idea about what reading is. Go to the next one. This is a more advanced decodable book. And you can see it says, Baby Bear was sleeping, snore, snore, snore. Decodable books have lots of repeated words. A mosquito buzzed near baby's ear, buzz, buzz, buzz. Look at Baby Bear, E-A-R. It spells air in bear. Then you go down and you look at a mosquito buzz near, and we have E-A-R spelling ear. And the same with ear. Now, we're trying to teach children to look for patterns, and this would be a leveled reader that would be used about the time of short vowels when they're learning that in phonics. So you can see that my little Tommy Turtle, who has a choice, phonics is really hard for me, but I can guess words real easily. And if we give a choice, then he's going to take that choice, and we just need to get rid of that guessing what the word is. I'm done, Michael.
Nope, you're going to
No,
carry
I
on.
meant with that section. I'm going to keep
Okay.
going. Now we're going to get to decodable readers. So decodable readers can vary, and I wanted to show you a little bit about that they're not all the same. And instead of reading this, Danielle has already talked about the third bullet, which is that some decodable readers are approximately 70 or 80% decodable. Those are not the ones you want to use in intervention. You want to use decodable readers in intervention that the children can read all the words, that they have been taught and have practiced sounding out all those words. Next slide. Okay, this is, you all may have seen this. They're called primary phonics, but we call them the Mac and Tab books because that's the first book. You can see that there are 10 books in this set, and they start out with Mac and Tab, short A, then they go to short I, short O, short U, short E. This is a very good progress. Short E is last. I always look for that. If short E is one of the first or like AE, then I don't like those decodables because Shorty is the hardest for almost every child. Okay, let's go, keep going. In this, at the beginning, you have the words that are in the book, so that if you want to review the words with the children, you can. You don't have to. And then you have the high frequency words that are in the book. If they haven't learned all these, you can just give them to them when you come to that. But we would hope that they would know most of these. Next page. Now, what's good about these books is that the pictures do not necessarily support the text. There is not a lot of writing, a print on each page, because children get overwhelmed when they first start learning to read, and it's a good size. Let's go to the next page. Now, book 10, you can see, it has many more words, and for some reason it has fewer sight words or high frequency words. Let's keep going. And by book 10, we still are not overwhelmed with text, even though we have more text. And I want you to pay attention. There are no blends here. There are no digraphs here. These are simply either high frequency words, VC, or CVC words. Let's go to the next one. Now, this is to contrast. This is Continental Press. It also goes with, you can see it has short A, short A, short E, short E. There's my clue. They don't really know what they're doing because they have short E next. Short A and short E, short I, short I, short A, short E, short I. Let's go to the next one and let me show you. Okay. There is a word list, which is good. I want you to look at this word list. Do you see the word hand at the top of the second column? This is a short A book. Most of the time when kids are only reading short A, they don't do well with digraphs and blends. Do you see the blend in hand, the digraph in bath? We have class. And then look at the other words that are here. We've got fun, which is another vowel that they're going to learn later with a digraph. It's just not as simple as I would want a decodable book to be for my beginning kindergartners or first graders, or my struggling first graders or my struggling second graders. Keep going, Michael. Let's keep going. Oh, okay. You can see that it's got nice pictures and it doesn't have a lot of text, but those words are not as easy. I would call this 80% decodable. It's just not as decodable as I would want. Keep going. Now, if you have second graders or third graders or fourth graders, I highly recommend this set of books. They're called High Noon books, and you want the short vowel books. These are chapter books. So a second grader or a third grader feels as if they are reading a real book. And they are. They're real stories. They're silly stories, but they're simple stories. I want to let you know that there are 6 books in each set, and you'll want to get set A1 and set A2. They aren't very expensive. But only the first 3 in each set are decodable, or are short vowel decodable. So go to the next page. This book only lists the high frequency words that are in the book. Now, these books have all the vowels. So you don't want to use these books until the kids are ready to read all the vowels. And by that time, they might know many of these high frequency words. Go to the next page. It's a chapter book. So kids like that. Next page. You can see that these are much more, they have many more words on the page. There are illustrations, but they don't help necessarily with the story. And if you look at this, if you just take a look, you'll see most of these are CVC words, and you might have a few digraphs and a few blends, but these are pretty simple. And I really encourage you to get these for your older kids. Next slide. Okay, now we're going to come to Flyleaf. We're trying to make this short, and we thought we'd cut this out, but we can't because Flyleaf are our favorites. These keep going. They're also the most expensive next. They aren't nearly as expensive as geodes, but they're expensive. Not nearly as expensive. Can you go back to the last one? Yeah. They have short vowel books, and you can get little tiny books that are perfectly decodable. By the time you get to this series 2, they have a few, they're a little more complex. You can see Frank bumped into a fish. She was a red fish. These books have lots of good stories. These are good stories. You can talk about these stories if you want. We don't encourage a lot of talking about comprehension in intervention because intervention is to get the kids to read accurately. But we can't help but show you decodable books. And go to the next one. And you can see that this is Mr. Mole's stove. This is obviously about Long O. And these are books that you can use when you get to more advanced vowel patterns. And they're really, really nice stories. And that's really all we're going to say about Flyleaf. We just want you to know about them. Michael.
Okay, so let's talk about when to use decodables. And we use decodable readers, and this is really important, not to teach from, but after you have taught students a pattern, of whether it's a vowel sound or vowel spelling, digraphs, whatever, after the students have had some practice reading words in isolation and reading sentences. And then the decodables are designed and intended to be used as the sort of synthesis and continued practice moving towards independent reading of what the students have been taught. So they're really more of a checkup and practice to continue what you've done in the lesson, but the real introduction to a pattern should start with words in isolation, move to phrases, then to sentences, and then finally the decodables are where you're going to wrap things up and get some continued practice and build the habit of accuracy, continue building the habit of accuracy. These, as I said earlier, are designed for instruction, and where the focus should be using them in instruction. We don't care what the kids are trying to read outside of that instruction. If they want to pick up books from a leveled series, that's fine. They can try to read them. But when we're teaching them and holding them accountable in instruction, the purpose of having decodables is that they can read them accurately, and therefore we're going to expect them to read them accurately. And if they don't, we're going to help them get their words corrected and then have them read again until they do read it accurately, because that's how they develop the habit of accuracy, is with the expectation of accuracy and no guessing allowed. And we just don't encourage guessing. So we want to get rid of, and if you are familiar with any of these, leveled reading strategies, we want to get rid of those. We do not use those in decodables, and we really hope you don't use them in the classroom in general, but it's not about guessing, it's about reading what's there. But decodables, they can read what's there. If you've taught them the pattern, then they have something that they can read, and it's fun for them. You can hold them accountable for being accurate. They can be excited about being accurate, and so they work well. So to get ready for the way that we use them, I'm going to show you how we use them in small group intervention practice. Each student is going to read a section of text aloud to the group. The other students will be following along. They'll have the same text and they'll be able to follow along so that they're getting practice while one student is reading aloud. That way the teacher can hear the student reading aloud and monitor for any error correction that needs to be done. The checker, we call the other students checkers, they're going to be following along. And if they're doing a good job of checking, which we also hold them accountable for, they're doing their best reading because they're going to be trying to catch any mistakes that the reader is making. So everybody's getting practice, but you're getting to hear someone read aloud and be able to monitor how it's going. So what we do is we take our text, and I've got 3 examples here. We've got text without pictures. That's the 1 page on the one side. We have the Fun in the Sun with Gus, and then the more complex chapter book. And I'm just going to show you how we divide them up. With a simple text with no pictures, we take 1 or 2 paragraphs, whatever seems a reasonable length for a student, not too much to overburden them, but enough to start developing a little bit of stamina and maintaining focus and being accurate. And we divide the passage into sections. We label each section with a letter so that we can refer to so-and-so is going to read section A to us now. And then we do a word count for each section. And that's where you see the numbers there that say 32, 40, etc. And that is so that when the student finishes reading, the first thing you can tell the student is, you got 30 right. Not 30 out of 32, but 30, just positive, you got 30 right. And that sets them up for, well, I was very successful. Let's fix the other 2. And then you'll get another turn to read again to get all 32 correct. Because again, it's accuracy. So this is, and then we also will be tracking this. We'll show you the tracking chart in a little bit. So that's how we set it up with that kind of text. With the little chapter book, with the little text like the Power Reader, we might just assign each student a page, but we do the word count on the page. If they're not up to reading, if they can read a little bit more rather than just 2 sentences or 3 sentences on a page, then they could read 2 pages. And that's, you judge, you have the leeway to set this up for what's appropriate for your students, not to overwhelm them. But the idea is that they're going to be reading more than 1 sentence. So they're starting to feel what reading connected text is like, developing some stamina while maintaining their accuracy. And then lastly, if you have one of those high noon type chapter books, again, you're going to divide it into sections, label the sections, and it may be 1 or 2 or more paragraphs per section, again, based on what's appropriate for what your students can handle. Okay, I think, Linda, you're going to talk about this now.
I will. Okay, let's go to the next page. Want to talk about how we use what we do in a small group in order for the students to each get a chance and to keep the other students a chance to read and to keep the other students engaged. So I'm just going to go over this to make sure I don't forget anything. The first thing I want you to know that every student gets a turn to read. There is no choral reading. There is no, let's prepare to read this. There is, I've gone into classes and they read the decodable books to one another, and then let's read it all together, and now I'll call on you. The decodable book is your checkup. So you're going to not have...
So Linda, can I just say, you're looking for a cold reading. You're looking for a first time reading. No practice, no rehearsal.
And that lets you know whether the children have mastered what you want them to master. So each student has a turn to read, and while the student is reading, all the other students are following along with their fingers. We are not fans of reading from the smartboard. We are fans of everybody has the text in front of them and they are reading that. I'm not going to go into why. It's just, it works. And you can follow along and find out what the kids are, you can watch, are the kids reading. When the student, Michael already said this, but when the student finishes reading, you say, as the teacher, you read 10 words correctly. If they got all the words correctly, you just move to the next student. We are trying to develop independence. We want these children not to be dependent on us. If I say good job, they are waiting for me to say good job to know what they did. But if I just move on, then they aren't waiting. They go, oh, I got it right. Phew, I got it right. She just moved on. If I say, you got 10 words right, then they know, oh, I missed one or more. But I don't say that because these kids never hear you got something right. They're always hearing you missed 2, you missed 3, you missed 5. So we're trying to change that habit. Then we'll show you a chart. Michael will show you a chart as how to record it. And if there are, I can't remember what the next slide says. If there are no, I've said this, if there are no errors, you just move on. If the reader needs help with a heart word or high frequency word, then you don't say sound it out. You can just give that to them. And I have some strategies for that. Like if it's 4 and they read 2, I say, what's the first sound? And then they go, oh, that's 4. But heart words are a little bit different from decodable. Let's go to the next page.
I just did. You're already on this page.
Oh, what was the last one then? Show me the last one. Oh, okay, now go to the next. Okay, the next one. Now I get it. Okay, you guys, there's no 3-second rule. This is so important. 3 seconds is for administering an assessment. This is not an assessment. Give the student time to figure out the word themselves. That's what we want their brain to do. The first time they do it by themselves, it'll be slow. The next time it'll be a little faster. The next time it'll be a little faster. Every time I give them a word, I'm not allowing their brain to figure out what pathways to use to get that. So,
And if I can just throw in
Yeah.
one more thought. In general, we want them, if they get stuck on a word and know they really need help, they need to ask for help before we give it to them. So if they're spending a long time on a word and they haven't asked for help, then you just wait. But the idea is that we want them to own when, okay, I really am not sure what to do with this, but own it by saying, I need help. Because what we see in the classroom is somebody stumbles on a word or gets stuck on a word, and either Sally Skilled or the teacher, somebody reads the word for them, they continue reading, and it's as if they actually read the word. And there's no attempt to correct or help or teach. And that becomes the habit. And so they don't even know when they're reading or not reading because the word just sort of magically appears.
Yeah. And you'll know as a teacher, because you know teaching is an art, you'll know when they've given up. I mean, sometimes they won't ask, and occasionally I'll say, do you want to ask for help?
But you still ask them,
Do you
do
want to
you
ask
need
for
help?
help?
So they own, I need help, because
Yeah.
they need to own when they need the help, so that they're not going to wait to have somebody provide it. They either ask for help or you ask them, and then they say, yes, I need help. There's a big difference there between, especially thinking about intervention.
Next slide. Okay, error correction. Let the student finish his 30 words, 10 words, 50 words, whatever he or she is reading, and correct the errors after they finish. If they make a
After you've told them how many right.
Yeah, you go, oh, you got 10 words right. Then I go back and I point out the word. Oh, what's this word? Or sound this word out or whatever. And we go over each one. If you have the ability to underline in your book, which sometimes you don't, but if you have the ability, it's real nice to underline the words that were difficult for the student, because then they'll pay more attention to those the next time. We didn't have this here, but if they add a word, that is an error. And we just say, what I do is I say, could you read these 3 words? And then I just say, read them just like that the next time. So really you're going to have the student read. If they don't make any mistakes, you just move on. If they make a mistake, then you point out their errors, let them read what the book words are that they missed, and then they read again. so that, and they get up to 3 chances to read in 100%. Now, when I'm working one-on-one with a student, they can have 11 chances to read it correctly. But when you're in a group, 3 is really the maximum that the other kids
Well,
can wait.
and I would say that if they can't get it in 3, then they're not ready to read as much. Either the text needs to be shorter, you've exhausted their stamina at this level, or you need to go back and do some more practice before moving on. Because they can't get it in 3 when you've gone over the errors, you're too far ahead of them.
Okay.
It's too hard.
Next slide. So this is the same thing again. Student gets to 100% accuracy. They don't need to read the section again. I have gone to classes where the kid will say, I want to read again. Well, I let, if they want to read again, they can read it 3 times. Each kid can have up to 3 times, but that doesn't usually happen. And that's what we just told you. This slide tells you. All right. So, all right. So I just want to review. You guys, if we were in a room, I would call on you guys for this. But the goal is that the student can read all the words in his or her section without self-corrections. If it's a self-correction, then you go back and the student reads it again without self-correcting. And leveled readers are real big on, oh, you self-corrected. That's great. Oh, that's so good. No, we don't want kids to have to self-correct. These are the easiest words in the English language to read, and they need to read them without self-correcting. So we want a perfect read. If they read sound by sound, they're not probably, if they read all the words sound by sound, they're not ready for this. And if they read 1 or 2 words sound by sound, great. Go back and say, try to read these words as whole words. What's this word? Time doesn't matter, you guys. Let the student figure out the word. The minute we put a time limit on, they are going to try to guess. When they don't know a word, they're going to try to guess. So just get that time away. For me, I think it's about 20 seconds that I wait until a student is still trying, and I'll say, do you need help? But we teach the children to say, I need help. And of course, if they get help, that's an error, but it's a better error than if they make a mistake. Next one. There's no 3-second rule, just a reminder of that. And the next one. Always tell the student the number of words they got correct, not the number they missed. Okay, Michael, I think you're up next.
No, one more.
Nope. One more? Oh, yeah. Can students read decodables to one another? It's a great center activity. They can read decodables to one another once they've proven that they can read them aloud to you. So decodables, you're not just going to go willy-nilly, let me get some decodables. It's the decodables that they've read in your intervention group that can then be used in a center, or even sentences from those decodable books or pages. That's it.
Okay. So let me show you how we track what we were just talking about, how we keep track of what each student's doing. I put this packet in the handout, so it's in the handout, but here's also in the handout, tells you where you can get it off our website for free if you don't get it from the handout. So it's www.readsters.com, but it's in your packet. So you can see the chart here. We've got Sammy's sample. At the top, there's a place to put the name or the number of the passage that they're going to be reading. If it's a book, it'd be the name of the book. If it's a passage, or if it's a section, you would put, A. And then the page number, if it's from the book, or the section number, if it has a section letter, the date that they're reading. And then you can see below that, total correct, number correct out of a total. And in the recording on the sheet, we do have to put 10 out of 10. We don't say that to the students, but that's what we have to record so that we know how many words they actually were trying to read. So a 10 out of 10, you got it the first time. That student is ready to move on. When it's his turn, he'll have something different to read next time. If it was a 9 out of 10, then you can see he's got 2 and two more times rather, to try it. You can see that's what happened with page 4 with another, it's still Sammy, but you can see that first time 9 out of 11, 10 out of 11, finally 11 out of 11 on the third try is how we would record that.
Michael, could you go back to that slide one more
Yeah,
time?
sure. What did I do about?
Point
Sorry.
out on mud is in the tub, Gus can rub in. Can you see how there's a green the first time he read,
Good point, Linda.
and
Thank
then a
you.
red the next time he read? I have numerous colored pens so that I can mark what the student read all in different ink, different times.
So
And
you'd have at least 3, for these 3 reads. You only really need 3 pens, but that's a good point. Thank you, Linda. I forgot about the color. Okay. Any questions about the tracking chart? We're not giving you guys. We're trying to do this so that we have some time to answer any questions at the end, but we're happy to take them as we go too. We always get the question about comprehension. I think it's already been mentioned. When you finish the entire story, if you want to ask a couple of literal questions that can, like where was Gus or something like that, sure, but don't spend your intervention time on comprehension. I hear people say all the time, but students need to know they read for meaning. Students know they read for meaning. You don't have to teach them that. You don't have to practice that every time. They understand that we read for information. I think that gets overblown. And these books are not going to have content that's worth talking about. Save that for your read alouds with the good literature, the good stuff. And that's where the comprehension can happen. And if you're in intervention and they need to learn to decode, that's where your time and energy should be spent primarily. Okay, just one more thought on the tracking chart. If it is appropriate and you want to do it, you can also add another attempt after the student has read accurately. If you feel like they need a little work on reading more fluently with some prosody, read like you speak. If that is part of where you are, you may not be there at the beginning of your intervention, but as they get more comfortable with this, you may want to start adding that. Then you can use the tracking chart to, you read accurately, now let's read for prosody or fluency. And we just give you a smiley face if it was, read prosodically or with a sense of fluency. And so you can just add that to your tracking. Okay, Linda.
So, when are intervention students ready for leveled readers or other text during reading instruction? This is totally based on our observation. But what we find is that you can start going to 90 or 80%, 70% leveled, even regular just text that's on grade level. Once children can read short vowel, 1 and 2 syllable words with short vowels, are controlled vowels, long vowels at the end of a syllable, that's an open syllable, and silent E. That means that when you get to advanced vowels, vowel teams, that's when they're ready. They can now start using what the self-teaching hypothesis, and you still want to give them a decodable book when you finish long E or long A, but then you can start having them read non-decodable texts also because they need to get into that. This is, again, an observation. What we found, this is not true for typically developing readers. Typically developing readers are ready for regular non-controlled text long before this. But when we have intervention kids, we don't want to put them into any text that they have to start guessing. And this is what we find. Next page. Is this me? Okay, this is me?
Yes.
Okay, so you guys, how to keep students engaged. We're almost done. Keep going. Okay, tracking and checkers. Michael already talked about this. What we do is we have the reader read, the students follow along. At the end, we say checkers. And the checkers give a thumbs up if the student read all the words right, and a helping hand if they need help, not thumbs down, just helping hand. The kids sometimes get it wrong. I just say, you, you heard an error? Gosh, I didn't. I think you did okay. And then we move on. The teacher really gets it right, but they really like make them track, just make that part of your routine and then use the checkers. And then that's when the teacher gives the feedback to the student. The next one is, okay, I get this all the time. These decodable books are boring. They're boring to me. They're boring to you, but they're not boring to the kids. When kids are reading, they are so excited to read. And believe it or not, they even like these stupid little stories. One time I was reading with a little boy and he wouldn't stop until he found out if the cat got the fish. He said, I have to find out if the cat got the fish. I didn't even remember there was a fish in the story. It was so boring to me, but it's not to them. Learning is motivating, you guys. And anytime anybody says anything other than that, our brain is set up to read. So decodable text may be boring to you. They may be boring to the kids who already know how to read, but they are not boring to the kids who know how to read, who don't know how to read, and they love the tracking charts.
Yeah, the tracking is also a motivator.
Yeah, they love the tracking charts.
But if you're working at the level where they're having to work a little bit at it and being successful, but they're being successful, they're happy. They don't need to have a discussion about the book afterwards,
So now
although they probably can.
Now I have to ask, next slide.
We talked about tracking. Okay.
Okay. Do you understand the purpose of decodable text, you all? Give me a thumbs up or a helping hand. Okay. Do you know how to recognize differences in decodable text? Do you know how to look at them critically? Okay. How about how to use some ideas about how to use decodable readers during intervention instruction? Got it? And how about how to track students' accuracy? Then we have met our goals. And that's it. Well, we're happy to take questions. Any questions?
I have a comment, friends. I think, being in schools for the last decade of my life and really bringing decodables to the forefront, they're now more readily available than they were in the past. And we have so many companies that are aligning them to all the new phonics curriculums out there. And AI is helping us create more decodables. So just know that the field is way different than it was a decade ago. And we have a lot of access to good text, not for its content. It's meant to be quality according to what you teach. So if you teach a certain scope and sequence, there are decodables that match that. And what I love about your instruction for us today, Linda and Michael, is that we as educators sometimes the difference between what a child needs in small group, more tier 2 instruction, and what is needed in whole group instruction for a decodable text is very different. And you may not, if you heard Linda say, you may not necessarily need the decodable very much in whole group for above, typical kids and above benchmark kids. They might be like, boom, I'm just off to the races. While our students who are more in need of tier 2 instruction, that intervention, they need a much more specified approach, which is what Michael and Linda offered you. So hopefully that is helpful for you, because sometimes you're just pulling out a book and you're like, okay, let's just read this book. It's like, put some intention into that book. Focus on how children read and how you track the progress and how many correct they have. It really can change your ability to make a difference in intervention.
May I do something?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to call on Liberty. Can you unmute?
Hi.
Hi. What's one thing you learned? And if you anything, you can say I didn't learn anything.
It was really interesting to have like the different roles that students would play when they're doing the decodables, like having the student reading and then the tracking. And I think that would definitely help, when you're doing that. Unfortunately, I teach early literacy programs, so this isn't quite my area.
Well, you might.
Linda's good for always picking on the wrong person.
Kathy Lucas. How about you? Any takeaways from you?
Well, I really like the idea of telling the kids how many words they read correctly and just being able to keep going and just practice until they can read it fluently and not feel like you have to move on just because it says you need to move on.
Tiffany thank you very much. Tiffany Mickelson.
Hi. I really also I have to agree with the last gal. I really like how where you can keep track of the words and how especially the keeping track of it all before you move on. And that's a big missing link, I think, in our area here. So I really appreciate that.
Ruthie.
Yeah, and you're going to see sometimes you'll see an error pattern, a particular
Right.
thing that a student is when you start, when you're keeping track in your book and you're keeping track on the charts, it focuses you a little bit on each student.
Exactly. No, that's exactly perfect. Kind of helps me then for the next time and after that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Ruthie, Ellen, anything? We might not have Ruthie. How about Sarah?
Hi. Yeah, I agree a lot with what everybody's kind of been saying. I like telling them like then how many they got right, and then going back at the end, coming back and be like, can we try and read it again? And giving them those opportunities to self-correct before going back and having them read it.
Is there anyone who was surprised that decodables are at the end of the lesson, that they aren't used to teach the skill, they're used to practice the skill? Is it Tiana? I see you. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, this is my first year, and I'm working with fours in the early literacy, and that's an interesting that I hadn't thought of. You're right, it should be more as, like you said, a checkup or a way to after instruction. So that was an interesting way to think about it. Yeah.
Okay. Susan, do you have anything to say? Susan? Yes.
Yeah, I really like the time. That's what I find with little ones who don't have the confidence there, is that we just have to give them more time to get it figured out. And if we give them that time, it's going to speed up and they'll build that confidence, and then they get excited for reading and it just starts to snowball them. So I think that's really important.
Well, I'm going to call on one more person, Debbie.
Yes, I agree with pretty much everything everybody has said. I was really excited about some of the suggestions for decodable readers. And then I really liked how you emphasized that it's not necessarily for the students that are ready to take off reading, that it's the ones that really are in the intervention. I feel like we try to force this too much on kids that are ready for the next level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and by the same token, though, it's with the ones that need this, you're really setting their habits for accuracy and the stamina and everything. It's the perfect place to practice that. And I people seem to object to decodables because the stories aren't rich, the language is not rich. Well, it can't be rich because when you can only read short A, there's only so many words you can read. But they need this space in intervention, is that special space where they're going to learn to read the short A so that eventually they'll be able to read that other stuff. And we hope in the classroom they're getting exposed to all of the richness of the world through oral stuff. But for intervention, this is that unique little pullout where it's like, I'm going to give you exactly what you need, exactly where you are, so that you can move ahead.
Thank you all for indulging me in answering my questions.
Hey, Jackie, I think it's important to speak to those of you who teach 4-year-olds. Michael and Linda, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but I've worked, from Crow Agency to Hardin to Lame Deer to Pryor, working in early learning environments. And one of the things that I really always noticed about early learning curriculums is that they put a lot of predictable text in towards when the student would be moving towards kindergarten. So that end of their early learning, or what we would call preschool year. And then the next year would be kindergarten. And so what we would do is we would bring more the easiest decodable text in those like phonic readers, the very simple text, because this is when precocious readers in early learning environments benefit, I think, from decodable text, because their little brains can break a code. And if you give them a book that can break a code, you will see students going, the cat sat on the mat. And what that taught me in an early 4 or 5-year-old program is that a precocious reader given a decodable can break a code. And that is with very little instruction. That is that top 10% of the students in the normative sample, but they exist. And I had such fun with those readers, having students who could read those readers, and because they were bored in their rooms, they wanted to read, and they wanted books that they could read. And we wanted them to know that words had a code. And so they were given books to break codes. And so that was just one example of how I've used decodables in an early learning program as more for the precocious reader.
And you know, may I add to that?
Yeah, please.
There are people who ask me, well, what grade is he decoding on? There is not, if I say grade 1, that means different things to different people. And so I think in terms of where are they on the continuum? Now, if I have a 4-year-old who's ready to read the primary phonics, they're going to learn it really fast. If I have a 4th grader who's in primary phonics, it's not going to go fast. It's going to go slowly. But they still need to go through the same progress. Every reader who learns to read well goes through the same steps. They might go through them faster because they're a prodigy, but they still go through the same steps to become a strong decoder.
Yeah.
It's just
every good
fast
reader
they
had
go.
to learn to be a good reader. No one was born a good reader.
Any questions? We'd love a question.
I have
Julie,
a class.
Jackie, have you got any questions? Jackie, have you got any questions?
Oh, we've got one. Joellen, excuse me.
All right.
Well,
Thank you. You read my name correctly. I'm very impressed. You say you spend the time, and I'm totally with you on that. Yet we're so pushed on what lesson are you on now? How come the child hasn't gotten farther? Well, that 85% is good enough. That's considered proficient. Move them on. And I sit there and I'm like, no, it's not. These are words that the simplest words in the English language. 85% is not good enough.
No, that's the same as saying it's okay if you only know 85% of your letters.
Yeah.
Nobody would say that.
Well, they actually have.
I like that.
I know they have, but nobody with a brain would say it.
Okay. Yeah,
I really like the part on tracking, because my kids, if somebody else is doing the reading, their eyeballs are all over the place. And I try to get them tracked. And I will try your checking technique, because I'll tell them, you need to watch for various reasons. But I've never used the word check. So I'm going to try the word check and see if that helps.
And here's a little tip. Here's a little tip for when they're not tracking. So Linda's reading. She's our reader. And I'm going to pick on Nell. Nell is supposed to be tracking, but she's not. So here's what I do. I say, oh, Linda, I am so sorry. We're going to have to start again because not all of our checkers were doing their job. I don't call out on Nell. I'm not going to put her on the spot. She knows she wasn't doing it. And so Linda starts again. If Linda has to do that 2 or 3 times, Linda's going to find Nell at recess and take care of the situation for you.
Other kids want their chance to read. They do. I occasionally have to say, oh, it looks to me like you're not ready to participate. I'm just going to have you sit right down here. When you're not in trouble, you're just going to sit down here. But most of the time when I say, we have to start over again. You are doing great, but we have to start over again because not everybody's. The 3rd time I say that, the other kids will say, Nell, get your hand on, start tracking.
They do, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do want to
Peer
add,
pressure is great.
before you close today, that, you know, Michael and Linda wrote this little program called Phonics Plugin, and it has these wonderful little routines built into it. And ultimately, it was built for ensuring, you know, you teach these early routines well. And when teachers do it well, it's pretty profound to watch really skilled readers do it and real striving readers do it. But with the helping hands, the checkers, the I'm following, and they moderate themselves. And I've had it in many schools now. So Linda and Michael have tried and true routines and curricular resources as well.
We also try to minimize teacher talk, which everybody thinks it's hilarious that I minimize teacher talk because I'm a talker. But really, when I get in the classroom, they go, "Is that Linda Barron?" And it's the kids who are doing the talking, not me. So
I would add before people start leaving, I've used this method with ages end of kindergarten all the way to 6th grade. And everybody has a job. It's a group of 4 kids. It works best with a group of 4 kids because you want to get it through it quickly. But everybody has a job. And after the first, couple of sessions, they know their job. You put the right things in front of them and use a good routine and a good method, and they'll fly, which is the point, because you probably have another group that's coming in that you need to be prepared for. So I put the feedback form, and then I also dropped a poster for our book study. There is a link to register for that. If you are interested in that book study, the dates are on there, but you do need to register to make sure that you get a link for that and any information forthcoming.
Jackie, can I say one
Yeah,
more thing,
yeah.
just real quick? Our emails are on the cover, the title page of the handout. So if you have questions, you can track us down. We're happy to answer questions when they come up later down the road. It's Michael@readsters.com, Linda@readsters.com. Pretty easy.